Welcome, everyone. Today we're going to talk about something that I think affects far more people than we realise. What happens when you are spiritually searching, but you don't fit neatly into one religious box? Maybe you still believe in God, but you've become uncomfortable with organised religion. Maybe you're Christian, but you're also interested in mysticism. Maybe you're pagan. Maybe you practice witchcraft. Maybe you're interested in several spiritual traditions. Or maybe you honestly don't know what you believe anymore. Richard, I think that's where we should begin. Does someone have to become a member of a particular religion to explore the Ravenbrook tradition?
No, and that is one of the most important things I want people to understand about Ravenbrook. The Ravenbrook tradition was never intended to become another spiritual box that people have to squeeze themselves into. We're not trying to replace one restrictive system with another. The Ravenbrook tradition is a spiritual philosophy and framework for exploration. You can come from Christianity. You can come from paganism. You can be a witch, mystic, earth-centered practitioner, eclectic seeker, or someone who doesn't use any spiritual label at all. You don't have to abandon everything you believe before you approach Ravenbrook. In fact, I'd rather ask you a different question. What can Ravenbrook teach you that helps you understand your own path more deeply?
That brings up an interesting question. What if two people following Ravenbrook have completely different ideas about God?
That's okay. Human beings have been trying to understand the divine for thousands of years. We've created different languages to describe that mystery. One person says God, another says goddess. Someone else says spirit, source, the universe, nature, divine consciousness, or simply the mystery. The mistake we make is assuming that because we use different words, one person must possess the entire truth and everyone else must be wrong.
So, Ravenbrook isn't trying to decide which religion wins.
Exactly. I believe there's an enormous difference between saying, my spiritual path is true and meaningful to me, and saying, therefore, you must follow my spiritual path too. Those are completely different positions. Spiritual conviction does not require spiritual domination. I can believe deeply in my path while still defending your right to walk yours. That is part of spiritual coexistence.
You've used the word unity throughout your work. But some people hear unity and think you're saying all religions are basically the same. Is that what you mean?
Not at all. Religions aren't all the same. Their histories are different. Their scriptures are different. Their teachings can be different. Sometimes their beliefs directly contradict one another. We shouldn't pretend those differences don't exist. But here's the important part. We don't have to believe the same things to recognize one another's humanity. Unity does not require uniformity. Imagine several people sitting around a fire. One is Christian, one is pagan, one is a witch, one is Buddhist, one is a mystic, one is agnostic, and another person isn't sure what they believe. Ravenbrook doesn't require everyone around that fire to suddenly agree. It asks whether they can sit around the same fire without trying to destroy one another's path.
That's a very different definition of unity.
It has to be, because trying to make everyone believe the same thing isn't unity. That's conformity.
Let's talk about the flame, because it's central to the Ravenbrook tradition. What exactly is the Ravenbrook flame?
The flame is a symbol. It represents the divine spark within us. It can represent consciousness, wisdom, transformation, spiritual potential, conscience, and our continuing search for truth. But there's something else about the flame that I think is incredibly important. It places responsibility back into the hands of the seeker. Instead of spending your entire spiritual life asking, who has authority over me? You begin asking, who am I becoming? That's a much harder question.
Why?
Because you can't hide behind somebody else's beliefs anymore. You have to examine yourself. Does my spirituality make me kinder? Does it make me wiser? Does it make me more compassionate? Am I becoming less judgmental? Am I taking responsibility for my actions? Am I actually growing? Or am I simply collecting spiritual labels? That's why I say you must tend your own flame. A teacher can guide you. A book can inspire you. A ritual can help you focus. A spiritual community can support you. But nobody can do your inner work for you.
Ravenbrook also talks quite a bit about light and shadow. Some people might hear shadow and immediately think you're talking about evil.
And that's an important misunderstanding. Shadow doesn't automatically mean evil. Think about what we sometimes hide within ourselves: fear, anger, jealousy, grief, pain, insecurity, regret, old wounds, parts of ourselves that we're embarrassed to acknowledge. Some spiritual environments teach people to bury those things. Just smile, be positive, have faith, don't question, don't be angry, don't doubt. But suppressing something doesn't necessarily heal it.
So what does Ravenbrook encourage instead?
Understanding. You turn toward the shadow and ask, why is this here? What is this trying to teach me? Where did this wound come from? What part of myself needs healing? That doesn't mean surrendering to destructive impulses. It means becoming conscious of them. Light shows us our compassion, wisdom, courage, generosity, and potential. Shadow reveals wounds, fears, patterns, and unresolved parts of ourselves. And between light and shadow burns the flame of awareness.
Let's talk about questioning religion, because that's difficult for a lot of people. Some were raised to believe that questioning spiritual teachings means they're losing their faith.
I believe questions can be sacred. Questions aren't necessarily enemies of faith. Sometimes questions are how faith matures. Ask yourself, why do I believe this? Who taught me this? Where did this teaching originate? Does this belief create compassion or fear? Am I following this because I genuinely believe it, or because I'm terrified about what might happen if I don't? Those are important questions.
And you're comfortable with people questioning Ravenbrook itself?
They should. Absolutely. If Ravenbrook ever reaches a point where people are told you are not allowed to question this, then we've betrayed one of the very principles we're supposed to represent. Truth shouldn't fear investigation, and spiritual teachers shouldn't fear thoughtful questions.
Now, I want to challenge you on something. When you emphasize spiritual sovereignty, couldn't somebody interpret that as, I can do whatever I want because it's my spiritual path?
And that's exactly where responsibility enters the conversation. Spiritual sovereignty does not mean whatever I want is automatically right. Freedom without responsibility can become selfishness. Power without ethics can become manipulation. Spirituality without discernment can become fantasy. So the seeker has to ask, does this harm someone? Am I acting from wisdom or anger? Am I trying to heal or control? Am I respecting another person's sovereignty? Am I willing to accept responsibility for the consequences of my choices? Because here's something we cannot forget. If I demand sovereignty for myself while denying it to you, I don't actually believe in sovereignty. I believe in privilege.
This probably brings us to one of the more controversial aspects of your work. You've written about Christianity, Christian witchcraft, mysticism, pagan ideas, magic, religious freedom, and other traditions. Some people might look at that and ask, Richard, how can all of those things possibly belong in the same conversation?
Because Ravenbrook isn't asking people to pretend those traditions are identical. We're studying, we're exploring, we're asking questions. We're looking at history, spirituality, mystical experiences, ritual, symbolism, nature, consciousness, and humanity's relationship with the divine. And I think we've become too afraid of conversations that cross religious boundaries. A Christian should be able to sit with a pagan and have a meaningful spiritual conversation. A witch should be able to talk with a Christian mystic. A person who believes strongly should be able to speak respectfully with someone who doubts. That's how understanding grows. We don't have to agree. We have to learn how to listen.
What would you say to the person listening right now who has been hurt by religion? Maybe they still feel spiritual, but they're afraid to trust another spiritual community.
I would tell them something very simple. You don't have to rush. You don't have to adopt another label. You don't have to surrender your mind. And you don't have to hand your spiritual authority to another person. Explore slowly. Ask questions. Read, study, experience, reflect, and pay attention to what a spiritual community produces. Does it encourage compassion? Does it allow disagreement? Does it respect your boundaries? Can leaders be questioned? Are you allowed to leave? Are you becoming more empowered and responsible, or more frightened and dependent? Those questions matter. A healthy spiritual path should help you become more fully yourself, not less.
So if Ravenbrook doesn't require one theology, what actually holds the tradition together?
Values, compassion, integrity, wisdom, responsibility, respect for life, care for the earth, personal transformation, freedom of conscience, the pursuit of truth, and peaceful coexistence. Those values can cross religious boundaries. You and I don't have to agree about the exact nature of God before we agree that compassion matters. We don't have to share scripture before agreeing that cruelty is destructive. We don't need identical rituals to understand that the earth deserves our care. We don't have to share theology to defend each other's religious freedom. That's where unity becomes possible.
Earlier, you gave the image of different seekers sitting around a fire. I keep coming back to that.
So do I. Because imagine it. A Christian, a pagan, a witch, a mystic, a Buddhist, an agnostic, a person who doesn't know what they believe. They are sitting around the same fire. Nobody is required to surrender their identity. Nobody has to pretend their beliefs are identical. Nobody needs to convert anyone. They simply recognize the person across from me is another human being, searching for meaning in this mysterious existence. Maybe humanity's spiritual future isn't about discovering which religion gets to conquer all the others. Maybe it's about learning how to sit around the same fire.
Then let's finish with this. If somebody listening says, "Richard, I'm interested. What does the Ravenbrook tradition ask of me?" what would you tell them?
I would say, come with questions. Come with curiosity. Come willing to learn. Come willing to challenge yourself. Explore your light. Face your shadow. Study different perspectives. Respect the earth. Respect other people. Protect your sovereignty without violating someone else's. Don't blindly accept everything you're told, including what I tell you. Search, experience, think, reflect, grow. And above all, tend the flame within you.
So Ravenbrook isn't asking everyone to walk the same road.
No, it's asking us to recognize that many roads can gather around the same sacred fire.
Christian or pagan?
Witch or mystic?
Religious or questioning?
Certain or searching?
There is still a place around the fire.
There is. And that's the invitation of the Ravenbrook tradition. You don't have to surrender your path to approach the flame. Perhaps the flame can simply help you illuminate the path you're already walking.
And maybe that's where genuine spiritual unity begins. Not when everyone believes the same thing.
But when we finally learn to honor one another while seeking truth.
Until next time, keep seeking.
Keep questioning.
Keep growing.
And always tend the flame within.